This is one of the areas where we get into this. I don't understand if there's like brain breaking happening or what's going on. I don't know what world we can ever live in where we say that Trump is less divisive for the country than Biden. I think it is so patently obvious. Trump is so divisive. Like, not only does Trump make an enemy out of every person in the opposition party, he makes an enemy out of his own party and every single person around him. Like, we all watched him bully, Jeff Sessions. We all watched him bully his own party on Twitter. We all watched like all of these people walk away.
And this is something that Ben Shapiro absolutely knows is true. I like this because I think Destiny knows. I think Ben knows he's wrong about Trump. I think he knows that Trump was a terrible president and that obviously Trump is far more divisive than Joe Biden. But he has to kind of play this game anyway and pretend that, oh, no, Trump was clearly the better president, clearly more, uniting for the country. Very, very funny stuff. So I figure we could start with that if that sounds good to you, Zach.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I want to add about Ben Shapiro is it's totally right that he doesn't like Donald Trump. If you go back and you play his 2015, 2016 commentary on Donald Trump, he had no faith that Donald Trump was going to become president back then. He thought that the Republican Party would rise above it. He very much cares about the mythology of the Republican Party, and he wants to have the veneer of the buttoned up, principled, constitutionist kind of an interpretation of the Republican Party, still rabidly anarcho-capitalist, but, with the presentation to match what's becoming of a president. What's so fucking crazy about Ben Shapiro is that after not endorsing Donald Trump in 2016, which you guys can pull the tape on it, he does not fucking do. He doesn't endorse him. He doesn't think that he's a moral leader. He was really pissed off about the Access Hollywood tape. He's a pearl clutcher, man, to his heart. Doesn't endorse him in 2016. Decides to take a firm, unpopular with the Republican Party stance, right? What's asinine is that he just knew the writing on the wall was so bad by the second time around that it is the second time that Donald Trump ran for president. His re-election campaign, after 4 horrible years of governing, after the COVID pandemic, after, the extrajudicial killings, after not being able to pass any meaningful policy legislation except for a massive tax cut for the rich, ostensibly the only thing Ben Shapiro really did care about. He finally endorses him the second time around because he says he's actually a true conservative. So that's just all context for where we end up now. Like, Ben Shapiro dug his own grave. He could have been just a firm line, I told you so Republican if he wanted to be, but he didn't have the balls.
In the heavens of philosophical discussion of conservatism and liberalism, let's go to the pragmatic muck of politics. Trump versus Biden. Between the two of them, who was in their first term the better president, and thus who should win if the two of them are in fact our choices, should win a second term in 2024? Ben?
Sure. So in terms of actual job performance, you have to separate it into a few categories. In terms of actual performance in foreign policy, I think Trump's foreign policy record is significantly better than Biden.
Is Ben Shapiro, dare I say it, is he trying to look cute? Is he feeling himself today? Is Ben Shapiro, he rolled out of bed and he was like, yeah, I'm going on Lex Fridman Podcast. The girls are going to be watching. Let me put my beanie on, coif my hair.
He has been wearing that leather jacket more often.
Put on a leather jacket. It makes me feel good, man. Oh shit, little leather bomber type little deal over there. Oh man, maybe a rebrand's coming. Maybe he's gonna leave the right because he knows that the baddies are on the left. I don't know. That's just what I'm hearing. Rumor has it. You look on his face, he's got the brooding thing down, but he knows it's bad for your Tinder profile if you put that you're a conservative.
Biden's the world being on fire right now being a fairly good example of that. And we can get into each aspect of the world being on fire and where the incentive structures came from and how all of that happened in a moment. When it comes to the economy, I think that Trump's economic record was better than Biden's. Doesn't mean he didn't overspend. He did. He wildly overspent. But he also had a very solid record of job creation. A huge percentage of the gains in the economy went to people on the lower end of the economic spectrum. Actually, the gross income to the average American was about $6,000 during his term. The unemployment rates were very, very low before COVID. I think that you almost have to separate the Trump administration into sort of before COVID and during COVID, because COVID obviously is sort of a black swan event, the most signal
I look at the two
change
of them,
in politics in our lifetime. And so, governance during COVID is almost its own category, which we can discuss. But in terms of foreign policy, in terms of domestic policy, I think that Trump was significantly better than Biden has been. And that's on the upside for Trump. On the downside for Biden, obviously you're talking 40-year highs in inflation. You're talking about savings being eaten away. You're talking about everything being 20 to 30% more expensive. You're talking about massive increases to the deficit, even at a rate that was unknown under Trump. The deficit under Trump raised by about a little under $1 trillion every year up until 2020. Again, 2020 was COVID year, so everybody decided that we're going to fire hose money at things. But then Joe Biden continued to fire hose money at things in 21, 22, and 23. That obviously is, in my opinion, bad economic policy. And then you get to the rhetoric and you get to the stuff that Donald Trump says. And as I've said before, my view is that on Donald Trump's epitaph, on his gravestone, it will say Donald Trump. He said a lot of shit. I think that Donald Trump does say a lot of things. I think that that is basically baked into the cake, which is why everyone who's bewildered by the polls is ignoring human nature, which is at the beginning, when you see something very shocking, it's very shocking. And then if you see it over and over and over and over for years on end, it is no longer shocking. It is just part of the background noise, like tinnitus. It just becomes, something that your brain adjusts for. And so do I like a lot of Donald Trump's rhetoric? No, and I never have. Do I think that that is dispositive as to his presidency? No, I do not. When it comes to Biden, again, I think he's underperforming economically. I think that his foreign policy has been really a problem. Even the things I think he's done right are, I think, band-aids for things that he created by doing wrong. And when it comes to his own rhetoric, you can argue that it's grading on a curve because Trump was coming in with such wild rhetoric that just a maintenance of that wild rhetoric doesn't really change, again, the baseline. For Biden, he came in the same way that Obama did, on this sort of soaring rhetoric of American unity. I'm the president for all. Like Trump came in, he's like, listen, I'm the president for what I am. And, I'm going to say the things I want to say. I'm going to be on the toilet, I'm tweeting. We're like, okay, so that's what it is. With Biden, he came in with, I'm the president for all Americans. I'm trying to unify everybody. And that pretty quickly broke down into a lot of oppositional language about his political opponents in particular, an attempt to lump in, for example, huge swaths of the conservative movement with the people who participated, for example, in January 6th or who were fans of January 6th. And
that's because huge swaths of the Republican Party were perfectly happy to keep supporting Donald Trump even after the events of January 6th. So if you don't want to be grouped in with the MAGA Republicans, then maybe you should consider not supporting Donald fucking Trump. Because guess what? Whether you're enthusiastic about him or not, if you support him and if you vote for him, then yeah, you're kind of part of the fucking MAGA movement, bro. And you kind of have to answer for the undemocratic, dictatorial shit that Donald Trump tried to pull off. So I really hate that from Ben Shapiro too, where it's like, if you're going to be a Trump supporter, just own it, dude. But I hate this thing where it's like, yeah, I do support Trump, but don't call me a Trump supporter. Don't insinuate that I'm okay with someone trying to steal democracy, even though I clearly am, and I'm about to vote for it to happen again.
And the sort of lumping in of everybody into MAGA Republicans who wasn't personally signed on to an infrastructure bill with him, that sort of stuff I think has been truly terrible. I thought his Philadelphia speech was truly terrible. And again, I think that you do have the problem of
his Philadelphia speech. Was that the Dark Brandon speech with the red
where
lights?
they pretend, dude, where all the Jimmy Dore and Gray Zone grifters pretended that he was like fucking channeling it Satanist. That was one of the weirder things that they leaned into, but it was kind of all foreshadowing. Now Jimmy Dore is getting into the Jungian stuff and like spirituality, which he's realizing his own inner self is an empty fucking hole. Or worse, there's something else for him to discover down there. But hey, that's a topic for another podcast that we've covered at nauseum.
Yeah, dude, that was the funniest thing Biden ever did. And honestly, he should lean into it like times 100, the whole Dark Brandon thing. Like, he should go out there and do that every time he gives a speech with the red lights and be like, yeah, fuck these fascist MAGA Republicans. We're going to put them all in prison. Like, he should project more strength. That's my hot take when it comes to all these politicians, even ones that I hate. It's like they should take the thing that people on the other side criticize them most for and lean into it because it triggers the fuck out of them. Like Hillary Clinton, for example, she should have leaned in to being like, killer Hillary. She should have been like, yeah, I fucking, have a hit list. And yeah, I'm this super badass, all powerful lady who doesn't take shit. Like, that's what America needs. That's who we need to lead this country so we can boss around our enemies and put them in their place. Like, she should have leaned into that instead of trying to be this relatable old woman with hot sauce in her bag and shit like that. Like, that was never going to work for you, Hillary.
Racist as fuck.
And it was racist as fuck. Yeah. But in the same way, Joe Biden should absolutely lean into the fucking Dark Brandon stuff. He should absolutely lean into all this stuff that Ben Shapiro is so triggered by. Again, not that I give a shit, not that I like these politicians, but I just think it's stupid when they try so hard to be relatable sometimes.
Gavin sees a Dark Brandon rising.
He is no longer capable of, certainly rhetorically, unifying the country when every speech from him feels like watching Nick Wallenda walk across a volcano on a tightrope. It really is like you're just sort of waiting for him to fall. I mean, it's sad to say. I mean, the other day he was speaking for what was, in effect, his campaign kickoff, and this is in Valley Forge. And I mean, Jill rushed up there, like off the as soon as he was done. Jill rushed up there, like she'd been shot out of a cannon to come and try and guide him away so he didn't become the Shane Gillis Roomba. And that's not really, let's put it this way: it does not quiet the soul to watch Joe Biden rhetorically. Again, that's a different problem than Trump's problem, but that's my analysis.
This is one of the areas where we get into this. I don't understand if there's like brain breaking happening or what's going on. I don't know what world we can ever live in where we say that Trump is less divisive for the country than Biden. I think it is so patently obvious. Trump is so divisive. Like, not only does Trump make an enemy out of every person in the opposition party, he makes an enemy out of his own party and every single person around him. Like, we all watched him bully, Jeff Sessions. We all watched him bully his own party on Twitter. We all watched like all of these people walk away.
And this is something that Ben Shapiro absolutely knows is true. And you can see in his face right here, he's like, fuck, how do I respond to this? Because it's 100% true. Not only is Trump incredibly divisive to the whole country, but even within the Republican Party, if you don't suck Trump's cock and say every nice thing that he wants you to say about him, he will endorse your opponent, even if that opponent has a far lower chance of actually winning the general election, which is over and over again cast the Republican Party into chaos. Look at Arizona, for example, going with a crazy woman like Carrie Lake. Look at all of these states where they nominated the insane Trumpist candidate who got Trump's endorsement only to get slaughtered in the easily winnable general election because voters are turned off by the insanity. But again, it's all about Trump. All Trump cares about is who likes me the most, who will say what I want them to say, who will be my most loyal soldier. That person gets the endorsement, not the most electable person, not the person that would be best for the job, but just the most loyal sycophant. And Ben Shapiro absolutely knows this is one of the biggest issues the Republican Party is dealing with right now. All of their actual talent is being undercut by these Trump loyalists who are taking the shortcut to the top, again, just by satisfying Trump's ego. And he knows that that is creating such issues for Republicans all around the country.
Away from him. Even recently, I think his the Secretary of Defense Esper and John Kelly, the Chief of Staff, were saying, I think Trump is a threat to democracy. You've got all of his prior people that were around him, some of his closest allies. You've got Bill Barr that won't co-sign a single thing that he says. You've got all these people that he used to work with that all say Trump is a horrible, evil person. He is ineffective as a leader. He doesn't accomplish anything, and he didn't. To say that Biden has failed at bipartisanship when we've gotten the CHIPS Act, we've gotten the IRA, we've gotten the ARP, we've gotten the bipartisan infrastructure bill, when we've got like all this major legislation that is working in this historically divided Congress, as opposed to Trump that got us tax cuts and deficit spending. I don't understand where we ever are in this world where Biden is somehow more divisive than Trump. Even the speeches that Ben is bringing up, they always bring up. I remember that one. I think we might have even done it on our episode. The one speech that Biden gave, where at one point the background is red, and
that's the Philly speech I referenced.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh my God, it's over. This is the end." And then meanwhile, you got Donald Trump, coming into office saying things like, "If you burn the flag, you should have your citizenship revoked," or talking about MSDNC, that I'm going to investigate every single one of these media organizations for corruptness. I'm going to open the libel and defamation laws, and I'm going to take all of these guys to court.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's such a great point that Destiny's making, kind of exposing this hypocrisy, because Republicans are running around all over the country right now talking about how crazy it is that the Democrats are criminally investigating a presidential candidate, someone that is going to be potentially on the ballot in November. They're like, how dare you? This is the most dictatorial, authoritarian, undemocratic thing in the entire world. How could you possibly be investigating, let alone potentially indicting, a candidate who we're all going to be voting for potentially in November? This is insane. What tune were they singing back in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was under investigation for her emails and her private server? You guys remember James Comey, all that stuff. They were like, we can't fucking nominate this woman. The Democratic Party cannot nominate someone who's under federal investigation by the FBI. Are you kidding me? They're crazy. The Democrats are going to nominate someone who's under investigation. This is unspeakable. Of course, they weren't talking about how it was an undemocratic weaponization of the deep state and how, they were just trying to keep Clinton from being president and how she was, flying too close to the sun or whatever idiocy they make up to protect and defend Donald Trump. But yeah, they don't give a shit about that. Literally, Donald Trump threatened to lock up Hillary Clinton while they were both running for president. You guys remember that speech, or not speech, but that debate where Hillary was like, it would be terrible if you get into the office. And Trump's like, yeah, because I would lock your ass up.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
To which the crowd goes wild. That shit is catnip to the Republican Party. And now, just a few years later, they all turn into the biggest goddamn pearl clutchers ever. It's just outrageous.